The Federal Court of Appeal upholding the ruling that your martial law was illegal. They said you violated...
It's good to see you, Ezra.
Yeah, I'm sure Justin was thinking, good to see you back at Davos, Ezra. You're watching Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Crayden, and we're broadcasting live to you from the Ottawa area. Thanks for watching. We got a heck of a show coming for you today. And so many people are already commenting about how much they love Dallas Brodie, the leader of the OneBC Party, because she speaks her mind, she speaks truth, she talks about justice, she talks about equality under the law. I can't wait for this interview. And I tell you, you are going to love this. I've got something to add when we come back shortly.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist.
Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Hey, thank you so much for the incredible response yesterday to my interview with my old friend Scott Moorfield. We're gonna have Scott on the show again. There's some magic that happens when Scott's on the show, and he's the perfect commentator for Donald Trump because he's truthful, but he never gets into nastiness, and that's what this show is all about. We don't want to hurl insults at people. We want to talk about what's good, what's bad, what's truth, what's lies, what's truth, what's error. And that's what the show is all about. And thank you for subscribing and the numbers you have recently. We have been lacking in that recently, but you have come to my rescue. Thank you so much for doing that. And let's do it again today. We can do it. And we're fighting carny censorship. But when you see this button come up, the like and subscribe, please do so. Share this broadcast with your friends and family. And if we don't continue to move upwards with our subscriptions, we're going to get more of the same suppression, but you're helping us win that battle. So I thank you so much for that. And you're going to love this interview. I already see people lined up in the comment section saying, thank God you've got Dallas on again. Dallas Brodie, we love her. I really enjoy talking to Dallas Brodie. We had a conversation very late yesterday afternoon. I wanted to save it for this morning's broadcast. It's about an hour long, but watch it because the best sometimes comes up at the last in this interview. You never know what you're going to hear sometimes from Dallas because she's extremely frank and honest in her presentation. And that's one of the reasons I love having her on the show. And she's going to be back again because we're going to fight for what's right, not just in BC, but for what is right and necessary in this country. So I thank you so much. So without further ado, we probably should get into this interview. And I just want to say, we are going to move upwards. We're going to continue to resolve to resist. We're going to continue to give you the news on the station that you might probably not going to see elsewhere. And we're going to give you the exciting interviews that you're not going to see anywhere else. So without further ado, here's Dallas Brodie. Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Crayden. It's a real pleasure to have back in the studio Dallas Brodie, leader of the OneBC Party. And Dallas, I know you had and I want to start with this and get it over with quickly. I know you had some administrative difficulties there recently. You were the interim leader one day, not the next. Couple of days later, you were back. But I guess the only reason I raise it is, why do conservative parties, small c conservative parties in this country, spend so much time attacking each other when they should be attacking the real enemy? God knows BC is going into the ocean in terms of the problem that are besetting that province. So why did this happen? What was going on? And I'm just so glad you got it resolved so quickly.
A lot was going on there. I think we're still putting together the pieces of why this sudden broadside that I took, which was crazy. There were no problems on the team. There was nothing going wrong. And as I look back over that, the last month or so, I'm putting together the pieces of what was actually happening, because it looked like there was some funny business going on there about forces trying to get rid of our party. That's all I can say. And I think that based on the chronology of how I saw things unfolding, and it looked like there was some effort just to take me out. And it was very hard to deal with, super unpleasant, but I fought really hard to keep the party, and I'm glad I did. The members really wanted it to remain and stay, and I'm doing that, and I'm just happy to report that now our membership is building again, and donations are coming in again, and so things are back on track. But it definitely was a really difficult time for me, and I'm learning a lot about politics that you sometimes don't know everybody's agenda. And this is a hard lesson for me to learn, but it's a dirty business, and things happen that just catch you right off guard sometimes.
Yeah, it is a very dirty business. Want to move on as quickly as possible to your new documentary. I'm very intrigued by this, and I wanted to point out that when you go on YouTube, or sorry, on X, to find your video, there it is there, no problem. But yeah, this is what I found using another computer as age-restricted graphic content. And we saw this the other day. My producer sent a note to Elon Musk to say, what is going on here? Because this is a great video. You should not be suppressing it. But I don't. So I hope that's getting resolved. But this is the typical nonsense of social media suppression. But can you briefly tell what's the documentary all about? I know it's about the mass graves, but what inspired you to make it, and how has the response been so far?
Well, first of all, the response has been incredible. I believe we're over 1 million views now, and that's incredible for Canada and for a small documentary like this made by a small team. We're not experts or anything, and we did work really hard on this documentary. And basically, the documentary tracks my journey of when I first became I was an MLA, the AG critic, and I did my first X post in my life, which was talking about something that was going on at the Law Society. If you want, I won't go into it in total detail, but because it goes through it in detail in the documentary. But there was a thing going on at the Law Society of British Columbia about the mandatory course materials that all lawyers are required to take now involving indigenous culture. And there was a piece in there about the 215 mass grave story. And a lawyer raised concerns about this, and his name is Jim Heller, and he said there haven't been bodies found, the materials need to be corrected, and the word potential needs to be added, and this led to an absolute firestorm at the Law Society of BC. And ultimately, they ended up publishing documents online at the Law Society when this was being fought that branded Jim Heller as a racist and a denialist. And at that point, Jim was like, I've had enough. I'm suing them for defamation. And it was at that point that I posted that at the Law Society, we have to have truth based on objective truth. And so this documentary tracks what happened then, the explosion that happened after my posting, and then a Zoom podcast that I went on to where I was challenging the postmodern trend where we talk about subjective truths instead of objective truths, and my expulsion from the party. And so we embarked on a journey around the province to interview different people who have been impacted by what we call the reconciliation industry in British Columbia, which it has become. It's a full industry that is not ultimately benefiting the average Native person. It is an industry that is lining the pockets of extremely powerful people and making some people extremely rich while not improving the situation for Native people on the ground living a normal life in BC. So this documentary, it gives a lot of history about colonization in BC, the settling of BC, what the arrangements were back then, and then we speak to all sorts of different people, including 2 Indigenous men, one from the Musqueam band, one from the Lower Kootenay band. These are very brave men who agreed to come online and talk about this, and they didn't hide their faces, they didn't have their voices disguised, did nothing. And they talked about what's going on their reserves and what they're experiencing. And so for me, it was a learning experience. I was going with an attitude of curiosity and really trying to dig into what's happening here. And I think we succeeded in really giving a balanced show of what is of what is happening and why this whole issue of the 215 graves really needs to be addressed. We need a reckoning about what has happened here. That story turned our nation upside down in more ways than one and has caused untold problems, and the amount of money that's flooded out of Ottawa, the provincial government, municipal government since then has been astounding. And once again, it's not going to help the very people that they claim to be wanting to help.
Well, that seems to always be the case with the, and want to return to the subject we talked about the last time you were on the show, Aboriginal title. We've had a chance for that concept to percolate, what's been happening on the coast of BC with the Cowichan ban. A lot of columnists, a lot of people are finding the courage to say that this is going to mean potentially the end of private property rights in Canada. This is serious. Now, there's also been some boneheaded people out there saying, well, it's not really going to have much of an impact. Don't worry. We'll just continue with this. But has there been any serious attempt to address this issue in terms, this could wipe out BC real estate. People could be leaving the province en masse if this continues. And is there any movement to repeal the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, which is UNDRIP? I think that's a perfect acronym for it. But is there any real movement to repeal this horrible declaration?
Well, as you know, UNDRIP is the sort of the mother beast that sits above at the federal level, and it was adopted by the federal government following this put into law. But British Columbia took things another step further. They took it and they passed a law called DRIPA, which is really, so we've got UNDRIP and then we've got DRIPA, which is like the subsidiary of UNDRIP, and it was brought passed unanimously, if you can believe it, in 2019 by the BC legislature before I was there, by the NDP and the Liberal government, and I believe there were Greens in there at the same time as well. And this DRIPA is really what is being discussed here in terms of getting it repealed in British Columbia. DRIPA requires that everything in UNDRIP, that all laws in BC brought into alignment with UNDRIP. And this is, the magnitude of what that means is hard to even describe in a short video like this with you. It basically takes everything that BC stands for and how the basis for how business is done, how property is owned, everything, and turns everything on its head and upside down land. And so, and this means all laws. So you can imagine the amount of, let's just talk for a second about the money that's going into paying to have every law in BC redrafted now to align it with the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And the money and the effort and the time that's going into this is incredible. It's staggering considering we're sitting in a province now that is just reeling economically. We're not doing well at all. And here we are, we're spending, and we talk about it endlessly in the legislature as well. It seems to be the only thing on the NDP government's mind. Every third word is First Nations or Indigenous in there. And so the DRIPA right now, in terms of what's being happened, like after the Cowichan decision, and then the land claim that's come out for Kamloops, the city of Kamloops, and the adjacent ski hill called Sun Peaks, which is a major ski resort in BC, and the Ajax mine, which is in that area as well. This, and then combined with the mineral rights ruling that came out recently that said that all, basically confirmed that all laws must be now interpreted through DRIPA, including mineral tenure rights. The province is just reeling from this, and people, I've been speaking about this, and then now the interim leader of the BC Conservative Party, Trevor Halford, has asked, said it has to be, DRIPA must be repealed immediately, and Trevor's absolutely right about that. He even said that the legislature should be called back. We finished in early December. After he became interim leader, he was immediately calling for the legislature to be recalled solely for the purpose of repealing DRIPA immediately. He was right to do that. David Eby refused to do that, but he said now David Eby is even saying that he will look at amending portions of DRIPA because he's claiming falsely that he didn't intend, the intention of this wasn't to affect private property rights. that can't be true, because we know from the directives this comes back to the Cowichan case where he'd made a written directive when he was Attorney General of BC several years ago that government lawyers, the provincial government lawyers, must not argue extinguishment in any cases involving indigenous land claims now. And extinguishment is the strongest argument against any claims to private property rights. So extinguishment, it's a very simple concept. It's just that if you had bought a land and you own the fee simple title, that title is supposed to be superior to any other claim. And once you have that fee simple title, it extinguishes any other possible claim that can come. That is your land from now and forever until you sell it. And nothing can touch that. So he gave a directive here that his lawyers were not to make that argument anymore. And federally, Jody Wilson-Raybould, who was the AG at that time under Trudeau, made the same directive to the federal lawyers. So in the Cowichan decision, we had two sets of lawyers, the provincial lawyers arguing, and then the federal lawyers arguing about this case. And both of them basically had their hands tied behind their backs. They couldn't advance the strongest argument they had. So it's impossible. And after repeated requests to notify private property owners in that case, the judge denied that, and no, they were never notified. And it's really disingenuous for Premier Eby to now say this is an unintended consequence. It's impossible for that to be true. This was a direct consequence of saying you can't argue extinguishment. It's the obvious outflow from that directive. And so I don't know what he's going to do, because he's, as they say, you can't serve two masters, right? Either you serve the public of British Columbia, which is what your job is as Premier, or you serve First Nations, which is what this looks like he's doing. And and it's actually not even serving the First Nations people. It's like the neo-tribal elite, the chiefs and councils. And, this is what's happening here. And so I don't know what he's going to do. He's made promises. DRIPA is something he just loves. It's something he's celebrated, said it's one of the greatest achievements of his life. The Haida Agreement he said it's the greatest thing he's ever done. That was also giving away, there's private land in what used to be called the Queen Charlotte Islands out here. Yes. They are a beautiful area partway up the coast of British Columbia. The name was changed to be the Haida Gwaii. And then they've given, and so I don't know how he can say that. And I don't know what he's going to do, because he's going to be in big trouble from the indigenous masters, and then there's the masters who are the British Columbian electorate. I wouldn't want to be in his position, because he's made promise. I don't know how he's going to handle this, but it's a mess.
Well, hopefully the 95% of the people in BC who are not entitled to the Aboriginal title will be voting against the NDP because it's not in their interest.
I hope so. I mean, the government keeps saying that they're going to do something about this ruling. And then David Eby even says that he was promised by the court that it wouldn't affect private property rights. But I ask myself, I mean, I've been in court. I'm a lawyer. Usually judges don't talk to the parties to an event on the side about the case. So I don't know how he got a promise from the court that private property rights wouldn't be included. That would be certainly inappropriate, no? To have a court saying what they will and won't do before the trial starts. It doesn't make sense to me that happened. I don't know a judge that would do that. So that's another problem, but we have to see. They also promised to get a stay of the proceedings, but that hasn't happened yet either. So you can imagine the phone calls he's getting saying, if you dare touch this, Premier Eby, this is from the chiefs, you touch this, you're in big trouble. And then the public saying you need to fix this. So they're coming at him from both sides. Very uncomfortable.
Well, sometimes you have to look at this Aboriginal title. To me is so ludicrous and so absurd, but I don't understand why so many people just think it's something we have to do. Because if you look at it in starker terms, I don't see any difference between granting people occupation rights of property or houses or apartments or beachfront property, whatever, on the basis of their race, And what used to happen in Germany in the 1930s and 40s, where Jewish people were evicted from their properties, their houses, their apartments, because they weren't considered citizens, and other Germans were considered more equal than they were. And they had a right to take over their property, their houses, their apartments on the basis strictly of ethnicity and race. In those cases, they called themselves Aryans, and they considered Jewish people to be less than citizens. So that was the law. I don't see any difference here at all. I've been criticized for that. People have called me a racist for saying that. I'm sorry, but if you think Aboriginal title is not racist, there's something wrong with the way you're thinking.
Well, OneBC, and we've always held this, is that we want to get rid of all race-based laws in British Columbia because we have many different races living here. You could imagine, what if we started giving this to this race and that race? And they can say, yes, well, this is steeped in traditional, the original people of British Columbia and so on, but it's not working anymore. And it's certainly not working for the people even on these reserves. And I agree with you. And we're also, even Prime Minister Trudeau, the elder, with Jean Chrétien in 1969, saw the trouble that was coming with the white paper, and the details of it are not important, but essentially they were saying we can't have two classes of citizen in Canada. They could see, and he was, a liberal, and he was saying we can't do this. And that white paper was attacked by the Assembly of First Nations, which is, of course, the overarching organizational body for the 600 plus bands in Canada that span the whole country. And they said, no, we are not taking away no, we want these two separate citizenships, and we don't like your white paper. And the whole thing was dropped. But that was a really bad move way back then. We can't have, they called it citizens and citizens plus. And isn't it ironic now that this is supposed to be a group that's downtrodden, and yet now people are pretending and fighting to get their status cards because it's such a privileged position to have if you can get that. I mean, apparently, think about it. If you have that card and you take delivery of a car on a reserve that you have an association with, you don't have to pay the sales tax on a car or any sales tax. I mean, that's a good deal. And that's what they're entitled to now. And that's becoming a really valuable status. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, citizen plus. I think George Orwell referred to that as some animals being more equal
than others. Yes.
That's the same concept.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And I even speak to Indigenous people. I was meeting with a man this morning, and he was saying it's not helping us to have people be angry at us like this. We don't want this. We want to work. We want to just be fit in and be part of the whole thing. They really do. This is not helping them to become beloved Canadians. It's not working. And the answers are not that difficult, but someone has to have the intestinal fortitude to move this forward and say enough's enough. We've been saying that there has to be drastic changes in British Columbia. Basically, we need to immediately defund this whole reconciliation industry out here. We need to defund all voluntary transfers of money, wealth, and power to Indigenous people, because that's just voluntary. It's not mandated or requirement. Second of all, we need to repeal DRIPA, just like what the Conservative Party of BC is saying. They're absolutely right. I mean, they're later coming to it than I was, but that's fine. Better late than never. And thirdly, we need to declare UNDRIP of no force and effect in BC. We don't want UNDRIP here. I don't want the UN telling us what we're supposed to be doing in British Columbia. And then we need to get Section 35 of the Constitution of Canada amended to deal with this and stop leaving it to the courts to decide what Aboriginal title means. And finally, we need to get all these reserves and start operating as regularize them and have them operate as townships, municipalities, have fee simple title be given to the Native people living there so they can start moving onward with their lives. And that should be the progress. Those would be the steps that would have to be taken. And I think that would be the way forward. And the people benefiting from the current structure, of course, will fight against that. But that really those would be the things that would benefit the majority of British Columbians and the majority of Indigenous people in BC. And I don't know about the rest of Canada, but probably the rest of Canada too. I think it would be a big help to have clarity on these things.
Undoubtedly, if we could have equality under the law,
Yes.
which is how Canada was formed, and the basis of foundational rights was equality under the law. That doesn't really exist anymore. But by the way, I didn't know the Queen Charlotte's had been renamed. I grew up on Vancouver Island. Queen Charlotte's were to the north of us. I had no idea. And that's...
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had no idea they were renamed.
Yes, we call it Haida Gwaii now. I also want to say that there needs to be equality under the law also with our criminal court system and everything.
Oh, yes.
Like, we can't have different sentencing for certain people based on their ancestry. This is not okay. I mean, if you think about it, say someone commits a crime on a reserve who's Indigenous, and he gets a lower sentence, or he or she, and then goes back to a different kind of justice or whatever it is, but the victims, are they happy with that? I don't think so. Everybody should be, we have to be equal. Otherwise, we're going down a dangerous road. This is my view, that we are going down a dangerous path. It has to be one law for everyone, so there's clarity. And that I hope that these changes can come about, and we just need the right government, and we can move forward with this. And I think everyone would benefit.
Well, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. But that's exactly what, of course, is happening. Judges are basing their decisions on race and ethnicity, and saying that person was almost forced to commit the crime because of his or her racial identity. And it's absolute nonsense. And it just creates a society that doesn't trust the law and the judiciary anymore, because they know it's not working for them. They know it's two-tiered. But
it doesn't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, David. Well, it doesn't just involve Indigenous people. It's even our whole sentencing guidelines. People are not getting the punishment they deserve for doing really bad things anymore. What they do is, I mean, I was a criminal defense lawyer for years myself. I did it for 7 years for young offenders. I was there. I know what goes on. You get the best sentence you can for your client, but there is a penalty to be paid if you go around stabbing people. There's a penalty to be paid. It doesn't matter what your childhood brought you or the unfortunate circumstances of growing up. There are victims who have been stabbed, had their hands cut off, or like we've had in Vancouver, a man got his hand just lopped off by an insane man coming down the street, chopped off his hand, walked down further and killed another guy by chopping him up with a machete. That happened on the street of Vancouver just over like a year ago. And so this is the kind of thing, even if you had a terrible childhood, we can't allow you to go around doing this in society, and it's scaring people, and they're wondering, well, what do you get in trouble for anymore if you're not going to get in trouble for that? And shoplifting, if you don't get in trouble for it, people just do more of it. And I always say, whatever you allow, you get more of.
Yes. And well, what you do get in trouble for is what you get in trouble for questioning the absurdity of the system. And you'll be called a racist immediately by the chiefs, because this system has benefited the chiefs so much. It has loaded, it is incredibly slanted towards them. They don't want any change because it works for them. Doesn't work for average Indigenous people, as you pointed out so many times. Same problems at the reserve, same rate of addiction, same unemployment, same hopelessness. But the chiefs really don't care because it's working for them. But I wanted to get to this because I was just completely outraged over this, because I remember covering a story, and when Vivian Krause released all of her information, now I think about 7-8 years ago, I was working at the time for the Daily Caller, the U.S. publication, and they were fascinated by the fact that there was American activists, like the Rockefeller Foundation and Tides, was financing people in British Columbia to attack Alberta's oil industry. And it continues today. And I just want to show a brief clip, because before Mark Carney went on his latest jet-setting tour, first of all to China, then to Qatar, and now he's going, of course, to Davos, Switzerland, where he'll address the World Economic Forum. He stopped off in Prince George, and I thought, yeah, good old Prince George. I know it well. Like I said, I grew up on the West Coast. And what does he do? He meets with so-called Indigenous leaders, and this is incredible.
How was the meeting? It was very good. It was very good. It was excellent. What did you discuss? We discussed many things. A lot about conservation, a lot about opportunities, partnership, we're still working on this, aren't we?
The tanker ban is not partisan legislation. It is the result of 15 years of consultation and engagement.
All right, here's Chief, I use that in quotation marks, Chief Marilyn Slett of the Coastal Nations. This is a complete fraud. I don't know why this woman's calling herself a chief. It's dress up day for her to come in front of these people at a news conference and pretend her group, Coastal Nations, actually represents a single Indigenous person in BC or anywhere in the world. She is an activist. Her group is funded by American activists, American groups that are there to destroy the Alberta oil industry, nothing else. And she has the gall not only to stand up there and say she represents Indigenous people, Mark Carney has the gall to sit down with her and treat her as a representative of Indigenous people, which she is not. And now Mark Carney is essentially saying, well, these people have a veto over the pipeline because, well, it's not enough to just consult with Aboriginal people. We really need their agreement. But what really adds insult to injury this is this woman is completely unrepresentative of real Indigenous people in BC. I mean, what was your take on this? I was outraged.
Well, there are a lot of things going on here. First of all, well, we know that this group, this Coastal First Nations, is not an actual band. They are a formulation of a group called the Tides Foundation out of the United States that has been working in BC for 20 years plus now through their launching pad on Cortez Island called Hollyhock. You can look it up. And it was founded, it was a place where a man named Joel Solomon, who was inherited several $1 million from his family's business in Tennessee many years ago. I think the family was in, I can't remember what business they were in, but you can look it up. Joel Solomon, he started this, and he got together with another millionaire in the United States who was one of the heiresses to the Rubbermaid fortune. And she had inherited $60 million. And so they got together and decided they were going to use their money to start doing these nice things about the environment and things they felt were important. And they started the Tides Foundation in the United States, and then they started Tides Canada. And Tides came in, and they are fully involved in BC, and they have been actively, basically, my view of it, watching this over the last two decades, basically trying to turn British Columbia into a park, shutting down all resource extraction, step by step, landlocking Alberta. They did things like rename the oil sands to be something yucky called the tar sands. They've done all of this PR work to really denigrate the fossil fuel industry, make it impossible to get the oil to the ocean. And this is outrageous. If this were, and there are other groups involved, also the Rockefeller Foundation, the Tides Foundation, which now goes by the name makeway.org, makeway.org. They've changed their name because I think people were getting on to the Tides thing. Just imagine if this foundation, I have so much to say about this. Just imagine if the Tides Foundation was named the Trump Foundation, okay? Let's pretend the Trump Foundation was here puppeteering things in this province. Can you imagine what our media would do with that, David? They would go insane if anything with the name Trump was on it. But the Tides Foundation, they're happy to have, because it's a leftist, pro-UNDRIP, pro-massive conservationist, shut down BC's industries group. It has been underreported, and Vivian Krause is one of the bravest women in the world, and actually what she discovered was incredible. No mainstream media reported on this, but if there had been any other big group that was on the Republican side of the fence down there, it would be reported every day. You can bet your bottom dollar on that. And so this has gone on and on. Tides has been intimately involved in the reformation of the city of Vancouver. I don't even recognize our city anymore. They've ruined it with bike lanes, barricades, just stopping everything. The city doesn't even run anymore. You can't get through the city, and that's all due to what they started with Gregor Robertson as mayor of Vancouver when he was with Vision Vancouver back in, I can't even remember what year it was. It was horrible when he came in, and they just started micromanaging the city of Vancouver. And these are people from the States who didn't even grow up here, and they come to our province and start fiddling around. If I were premier, I would just say, all of you, get out of our province. You're not allowed here. We're going to let British Columbians run British Columbia because we know how to take care of it better than you do anyway, and we don't want you here. Go away, Go back to where you came from, and you go down back to California and you manage their stuff. Go back down to Oregon, please. Get out of here. You're hurting our economy. BC is in terrible shape right now. It's super sad to watch. We used to be just an incredible breadbasket and engine in Canada, and now we're a resource-based province, David. It's mining, it's forestry, it's fisheries. Some manufacturing was done here. I'd like to bring back more manufacturing. We should be having shipbuilding. But you see, we've created a hostile environment here for investment, and this pipeline is desperately needed. It's in Canada's interest. It's in British Columbia's interest. And I believe that Carney fundamentally doesn't believe in the pipeline. And he came out here and had this, what I would call a faux consultation. And now he has deniability to say, well, it's not me who doesn't want the pipeline. It's this Coastal First Nations group. And I'm being so respectful of their desires. And so he gets cover for that, in much the same way that they offloaded all of the decisions during the mandates to provincial health officers, saying, well, it's not me who's saying it. I'm just deferring to a doctor who knows better than we do. And this is a sleight of hand, and I think it's really wrong. British Columbians should be deciding what's going on here, not a small group compiled together by Tides Foundation to fight this. And, but I think fundamentally, our Prime Minister doesn't want a pipeline. And I picked up his book recently. I was in a bookstore and I saw his book. I plugged my nose, picked it up and started reading it. I just opened it to any page. I said, good grief. This is scary if this is our Prime Minister. This is what he's doing. They're happy to have other countries have oil. Pipelines, Carney's all for pipelines in the UAE and Qatar and other places. But no, we can't have anything here. God forbid. But we're happy for other people to have it, David, but not here. Why? British Columbians need the jobs too. We need an economy. It's terribly sad. And I really despair for BC right now. And I mean, I have hopes and so on. That's why I'm here fighting. But I see what they're doing. We're just going to be a park with nothing going on. And, the cities can't just exist without booming resource sectors. Sawmills are closing down. They can't get fiber. Imagine that. We can't get fiber in British Columbia. Have you ever driven through British Columbia? We're surrounded by trees.
Sure have.
Like so many trees. And we need this pipeline too. And most British Columbians are pretty worried about this. So Mark Carney, yeah.
Well, I don't know how it could get any worse. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that because it probably could, but I agree with you 100%. This is Mark Carney posturing. This is Mark Carney looking for an excuse to drop out. But as Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, has pointed out many, many times, including in a very good video he put out, saying that every court decision has indicated that First Nations groups, bands, do not have a veto over the construction of a pipeline. And Mark Carney is essentially giving that to them.
Yes.
Giving it to them because he doesn't want to build this pipeline. And as you said, it's great. Let's build one in the rainforest of Brazil. But that's fine. Let's use slave labor to do it. No problem. Brookfield can do that. It's Brookfield first, as far as I'm concerned with Mark Carney. But I think the fact the mainstream media did not even bother to point out that this so-called chief was not, and she doesn't represent anybody. Coastal Nations is fraudulent. It's not a First Nation band. No, nobody in the mainstream media pointed that out. They just carried the farce like it was real. This was theater, and I found it absolutely infuriating. But
the media out here behaves more like clapping seals than actual journalists who roll up their sleeves and dig into what's going on here. They are so lazy. They just take the story. They just report the easiest thing possible that won't bring any trouble down on their head. And then they just print their story and off they go and they go to the next thing. This is work that needs to be done. The people need to know what's going on. And when the media doesn't do it, I mean, I shouldn't be the one having to bring this to light. The journalists have a job to do, and I don't know why they're not doing it. I worked also in journalism for many years. And, they're not supposed to be putting their thumb on the scale for one side or the other. They're supposed to report what's going on, and there should be more investigative journalism going on as to who's really pulling the strings here. What is going on? What's going to happen to BC if we don't have this? What's going to happen to Alberta? How will this impact us? And, you know, it's very unpleasant to be called a racist or a denialist or all these things, but we really need to get past that, because this is way past that now. This is about the financial and economic viability of a very important province in Canada and Alberta, because this is clearly an effort to landlock Alberta. I mean, how it's so obvious, right? It make Alberta struggle to get its oil out, and if there isn't a pipeline, different projects aren't viable. And David Eby likes to say, oh, there's no proponent, there's no pathway, there's no plan. And I say to myself, but that's ridiculous. Of course, there's no proponent for a pipeline right now, because they know there's no possibility of it happening, because you're going to block it. But if you say we're open, we'll take bids, let's get it going, it would happen. And David Eby and Prime Minister Carney has the power to say, this is in the interest of Canada, we're rolling through. And that's it. He's supposed to be the Prime Minister, not this fake band.
Yeah.
He's the Prime Minister of the country. And he's saying these 5 people can tell us no. Think about that.
I know it is just incredible. It's beyond belief. But David Eby, along with our chief Maryland there, both said, you know, they're really, really concerned about tankers off the West Coast. This is basically the litmus test for them, because there's just nothing that could be done if one of those tankers should wash ashore. But I found this absolutely fascinating. There's no tanker ban on the West Coast if you're not Canadian. I mean, this is going on every week. We have got all kinds of tankers off the West Coast, just not Canadian. And they're not coming to pick up Canadian oil. But tankers are sure sailing off the West Coast. So how did this absolute lie, and I won't even say it's a misconception, this is an absolute lie, that somehow the West Coast of British Columbia is tanker free. There's nobody out there. And it's time to point out to people what the truth is, what the reality is here.
It is. And it is a lie. It is a lie. I forget the number. There's something like 87 tankers going by every week or something. I mean, it's a big number. And this is another failure of the media to report properly, and commentators. I mean, we're starting to see more people really starting to do some really good commentary in the National Post. Some people having the temerity to actually say what's true. What a concept, hey? We're in a post-truth world in Canada right now, but I'm working to beat that mountain down a little bit with other good people. But we are, it is a lie. And British Columbians are just being cheated out of a whole bunch of business that we could be doing. And I know people harken back to a terrible oil spill that happened in the late 80s. It happened, it was terrible. It was called the Exxon Valdez oil spill.
Yep.
It was horrible. And people were upset. It was very sad. But things have changed since then. All the hulls are doubled now. They've taken steps like we always do when things go wrong, like when a car crashes and people die, they take steps to improve so that people don't die next time with airbags, and we make improvements as we go along. That's the beauty of engineering and, you know, making it so bridges don't fall down or problems. We learn as we go. And nobody wants an oil spill. Nobody wants that, but we need to have an economy for people to be able to live and make a living and raise their families here. And we can do this and still be safe, but there are people who tell you we can't. I don't buy into that, particularly when, as you say, and as you've rightly pointed out, there's incredible traffic of tankers going up and down our coast all the time.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's like saying, I'm not going to take another transatlantic voyage because of the Titanic. Remember,
Yes.
it just, things haven't changed since 1912, so I'm not going to move. And
Planes
yes,
crash. Planes crash too. Planes
the
crash too.
Exxon Valdez, that it was terrible. It was traumatic, but my God, that was what, 40 years ago now?
Yes,
And,
that was late 80s. Yep.
Yeah. So I think perhaps things have changed. Obviously, they've changed, or we'd be having oil spills all the time with all of these tankers going up and down the West Coast. But of course, it's okay if it's like building a pipeline in Brazil. If it's somebody else's tanker, that's okay. because as long as Canadians are getting punished, especially people in BC and Alberta, as usual, are getting punished by these decisions. They really don't care.
David, wasn't this one of the ways Poilievre really jumped into the national attention back then? He was on a Zoom call, much like this, and he was on a committee of some sort. It was the first time I'd ever seen this man. Someone said, "Have you heard about this guy Poilievre?" I'm like, "No." They said, "Watch this." And he was actually grilling Mark Carney at the time. I forget where Carney was and what he was representing at the time, but this is precisely the topic that he was grilling Mark Carney on at that time. He said, and it was about oil, development of fossil fuels, and it was brilliant. And I remember thinking, wow, this guy's really got fire. And I was so happy to finally see somebody standing up for Canada. And he was saying this, you seem to be happy for everybody else to have oil and things, but not here. Why? Why do you want to do this to Canada? And he really had Carney on the ropes, frankly. And Carney's answers were terrible, just terrible. And it was clear he didn't care about Canada and development of this industry here. He wants to shut it down. It's obvious. Otherwise, he'd say to this band, forget it, we're moving through, we've consulted and we've made our decision and we're still going ahead, and that would be the end of it. I mean, would you even be able to build the CN Railway now? I mean, think of that magnificent project, the building of that railroad. I mean, and the incredible Gordon Lightfoot song written about the Canadian Railway trilogy and the incredible sacrifice to build this. That was a feat, a magnificent feat of this country, right? Exactly. And probably now they would say we can't build the railway.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, because there might be a tanker spill, a train fall off the track, or it goes through
somebody might be hurt in the construction. That would be enough. And we can't have that. And that's it. We have lost our ability. Well, I would say the federal government has lost its ability to dream big dreams. It's just
we have to dream big.
Nonsense.
We have to dream big, and we have to think big, because other countries around the world are, and we have this incredible country, this tiny population. We could be just doing so well, and we keep getting defeated by these limp governments who just don't dream big and go big. They need to think big. And stop thinking little tiny little bits here and there.
Yeah, exactly.
And show some optimism.
Another BC story that I've, of course, been following for quite some time. It's almost been a year now since I picked up on the Universal Ostrich Farms story out of Edgewood, BC. And the latest, and it was interesting, just literally about 12 hours before the Canadian Appeals Court ruled in favor of the Freedom Convoy, and I'll get to that in a minute, but the CFIA upheld a $10,000 fine on the ostrich farm on the erroneous, I have no trouble saying that, on the erroneous accusation that the farm did not report the sickness last December, supposedly of avian flu. And we don't even know if that's for certain, because the CFI only conducted 2 tests on dead ostriches. So within hours of this, Katie Pasidney, the farm spokesman, went on her Facebook and she posted dozens of documents, call logs, proving the CFI is lying again about the whole thing. And these documents are beyond dispute. And I've been talking about them for the past few days. They clearly did inform the CFIA. There is no anonymous tip necessary to alert the authorities to this sickness on the farm. They played exactly by the rules because they believed if they did so, they'd be treated fairly. They were never treated fairly. Nope. At any time in this process. They were ground into the dirt. Their farm is a wasteland right now. If you've seen pictures of it, it looks like
I've been up there.
They have not been allowed to clean it up because of the quarantine. The CFIA has continually tried to add further punishment. And so a $10,000 fine for something they never did, it just absolutely infuriated me, because once again, it wasn't enough to massacre hundreds of ostriches. It wasn't enough to do what they did on that farm, to essentially try to destroy it. But now they've got to fine them $10,000 for something they didn't do. And I think Katie did a magnificent job of coming back with the facts on that. Not that it's going to make any difference, of course, because it never did during the whole process. It was about lawfare and about defeating these poor farmers in every way possible. And that's the CFI never never listens to reason. Even though they like to say they're all about science, they've never been scientific about this whole process. It's been punishment, it's been retribution, and it's been about ignoring the real facts, which are herd immunity, natural immunity, and the fact that none of this should ever have happened to this family. What were your thoughts?
This was a terrible, this is the most profoundly sad and actually terrifying story of what went down there. And if you look back over it, like I went up there to the farm to see it, and I was just horrified by what I saw up there. I arrived when they had so many police up there. I actually did something on Rebel News about it. I just was so devastated to watch how Katie and her family were being treated. The number of police assigned to guarding ostriches. I mean, you'd think that there were 400 Paul Bernardos in there, right? There were 400 birds. They had hundreds of police officers up there, apparently all being paid to stay in, is it Vernon, the closest city?
Yes.
Trucks, cars, food. You know, they were wearing bulletproof vests, if you can believe it. I mean, honestly, it looked like a military zone. And then for weeks, while they were pretending just to be waiting for a decision at the court, I'm looking back going, it was such a planned thing. They were actually slowly setting up the kill pen, step by step, day by day. This goes up. They played it out really slowly. So each day it was just an incremental, inexorable movement towards the outcome they all knew they were going to do, which is to kill all the birds. They didn't want to test. Katie is a responsible farmer. By the way, her farm was located something like 150 kilometers away from any other place around there. These are flightless birds, so they couldn't go flying here and there to pass on the flu if they had it. They had something like 200 and close to 300 days of no disease in these birds. And Katie would have for sure participated, but they wouldn't even allow Katie to test them again. Like, what's that about? What do you mean you won't allow them to test? Don't you want to know the truth of whether there is any infection in these birds? Why don't you want to know the truth? Well, they have another agenda to, and we can go into what that is. But so they didn't even allow her to test her own birds, which is bizarre. Think about it. If you're claiming they're danger, why don't you prove that they're a danger? Let's deal with this. And then the way they also had police fencing up all around where the birds were, and they wouldn't allow Katie and the workers there to even go in and see the birds anymore. And apparently all of these birds, they knew them. They're highly intelligent, and it was actually, I would think it's animal cruelty. They would come to the fence and sort of look for their people. And then the manner of the slaughter is enough to make you sick to your stomach. Shooting these birds, apparently they were running around, smashing into each other, screaming. Why, even if you were going to do this, why not euthanize them? I've been with an animal being euthanized before. It's very peaceful, it's quiet, it's extremely quick. It wouldn't have taken very long to do that. But this was just so gruesome and very cruel way to kill animals, running around terrified. We don't do that to cows. They've designed ways to even slaughter animals that tries not to have them panic, and so on. And I'm not saying that that's a perfect business, but I'm just saying that she would have participated in the humane euthanization of her own animals if she knew that they were sick. I believe that. Katie's a very principled and honest person. And this fine, on top of all of the way they've been treated, is just more of this. The process is the punishment. The process, they're trying to make it so awful that no one ever tries to stand up to them again. And I don't know where this philosophy has come from in our country, David, where the government acts like you are going to be forced to do what we tell you to do. We are not going to listen to you. We're not going to talk to you. We are going to force you and be really mean to you about it. And so that you never raise your head up out of your little rabbit hole again.
Yeah, and this fine, I think, was just another example of how mean-spirited
it's really mean.
The CFI has become. after the behavior at the farm, which was cruel, sadistic at times, absolutely unintelligible at times. These people were incompetent, and all they seem to be good at, as Katie likes to say, is lying and killing. But we did have some good news this week, last week.
That's good.
Dallas, and that, of course, is the decision by the Canadian Appeals Court to side with the ruling by Justice Richard Mosley in January 2024, when he said the invocation of the Emergencies Act by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was unacceptable, was unnecessary, was inappropriate, unjustified, and potentially unconstitutional. Now, the appeals court came back and said, yes, it was unconstitutional, and it violated the charter rights. And I think, thank God. I had Chris Barber on my show within an hour of that decision to talk about it. Of course, Chris, Big Red, principal organizer of that protest, along with Tamara Leach. And he said, it was 50-50. I really am shocked that they came down on our side, but we're celebrating and we're happy. This seems to me a moment for Canadians who believe in freedom, who believe in liberty, and think maybe there's still some hope out there with the established judiciary to do the right thing. I mean, were you in some way emboldened by this decision, encouraged by it?
Well, we should be encouraged by it. And there's another decision that came down this week that's important about the records relating to the mass graves story. But I'll come back to that. This decision is very important because even our national anthem, we talk about Canada, the true north, strong and free. We have to be free. And even people who, didn't like the truckers or whatever, they should actually be glad that someone is still standing. And the hits that Tamara Leach and Chris Barber, I know I've met Chris, he's an incredible man. He's a quiet guy. And what he's gone through has been living hell. And Tamara as well, I don't know her, but it's been terrible. Imagine this. This is another situation where they're trying to make an example out of people. Don't ever do this again, or look what's going to happen to you. And but I think the reason why we're starting to see little glimmers that maybe there's a change coming, that we're going to start to see a return to common sense and proper governance, because the people and people like me and more and more politicians and people like you, alternate media, because the mainstream is not doing this. We're starting to really talk about this, and it's catching on. And people, they're feeling a shift in the air, because judges are affected by the public mood just like anybody else. They are human beings. When the winds of change come, they can sense it. And probably there was a time when judges get nervous too, because everybody is subjected to their own social groups, right? You don't want to be the first one to break rank. And it's hard everybody's, unless you're a brave person and you're willing to take the hits for doing the unpopular thing at that time. This is a really great sign for Canada. And I'm thrilled about this decision. And so I'm just so proud of that Court of Appeal for finding this way. It's fantastic news. And we had another great decision this week from the Privacy Commissioner of Canada. Have you heard about this?
Not sure I have. No, I'm not sure
this
I have.
is because the mainstream media didn't report it again. But I forget her first name, but she gave a decision this week that the progress reports that were supposed to be filed by the Kamloops Band, they received $12.1 million earmarked for exhumation of the bodies and identifying of remains. There has been no digging done, as we've reported, and it has been reported. There have been no bodies found. And there were freedom of information requests filed about the progress reports that were part and parcel of that money being granted. So the 12.1 million, part of the deal was you have to file your progress reports about how the digging is going, essentially. And so when apparently it's been over a year since the request was filed, and the Privacy Commissioner, it was appealed by a research group called, two groups, I think. One was called Blacklocks is a research group that does a lot of freedom of information requests, and completely nonpartisan. They just go for information, and they won an appeal they put in saying this has been undue delay. And she has ordered that all of the records be released within 30 days, like immediately, saying this is an outrageous breach of accountability and transparency in Canada. And the decision, I can send it to you after but I've read the decision. It's just a short thing saying you have to release all the records. And this is a massive victory to people like Francis Widdowson, Jim McMurtry, and people like me who have been saying we need accountability on this, because this is taxpayers' money. And so this is also fantastic news for Canadians, and we should celebrate this. And this is another decision that I think is motivated by a changing of the times, that people are starting to realize Canadians aren't going to put up with this anymore.
Well, every now and again, I have cause for celebrations, cause to think maybe there's hope for this country yet. And there are days when I wonder if there is hope for this country. But
there is hope for this country, because we're going to keep fighting for it, and we have to learn that we are in a war of sorts here, and people need to stop thinking it's a lost case. Imagine if people had just given up in World War II. We don't even have to fight the way those poor boys did, going over there and in trenches, and the horrible things that young people gave to fight back then. We're not even close to that. The biggest fight we have to do right now is tell the truth. Gee, how scary could that be? You're not even facing bullets. And people are, oh, I'm so afraid to say this because I might lose friends, or someone might get mad at me or call me a name. Really, let's find our courage and our bravery to start saying enough's enough. We're not going to tolerate it. We're going to save our country, because Carney and the leaders can't do it until the people get active. You know, they say politicians don't create parades, they jump in front of them. So as they feel the tides changing, the politicians will be there to lead it forward. But it's taking, we can do this. I know we can, and I'm going to stay and fight. You don't have to be doing this. I don't have to be doing this, but I'm doing it because I love Canada. I love British Columbia, and I respect what my ancestors built for us here. And I have to fight for what's right. And that's just me. That's just me. And I think a lot of people appreciate people like you and me who are doing this. And I say to people, if there's nothing else you can do, go to work tomorrow and delete the pronouns and delete the land acknowledgements from your signature page. If that's all you can do, at least do that. If you're so inclined, at least do that, and maybe bring it up at the next dinner party and risk being unpopular for 10 minutes.
Well, I think that's excellent advice, and you once again encouraged me just by the work you're doing. And I think the work you're doing in BC is not just for BC; it's for the country, it's for Canada. And I want to thank you. We've gone the full hour. You know, I can't imagine, but it's always a pleasure talking to you. It's just fantastic what you're fighting for, and I encourage you to keep doing it. I don't need to do that, because I know you are a fighter, and you will continue to fight for liberty, for justice in this country, and we need more people in BC doing that and across the country. So thank you for the work you do, Dallas. It's appreciated. And thank you for coming on today, and we're going to be doing this again, because
Good.
I want to follow the work you're doing. I think it's important the Canadians know about it, because it's not being reported. And I gotta show you this, because I reported this story about the appeals court throughout a lot of U.S. media, which were fascinated by this, and they remain fascinated by the Freedom Convoy protest, because they said it inspired Americans.
It did.
Canadians had the moxie and the guts to get out there in February. It was cold here in Ottawa, very cold. And if we had the moxie and the guts to get out there and to face down these COVID mandates, well, Americans could do it too. So the mainstream media didn't spend a lot of time on this story, but I tell you, the independent, the new media have been doing a lot with this. And I think we need to do that. So God bless you, Dallas, and God bless the work you're doing. It's appreciated.
Thank you, David. Well, my next project is going to be tackling the addictions industry in Vancouver. That's my next big project. We've got the reconciliation industry, the addictions industry, and then I'm going to start exposing the political industry out here and why we find ourselves in these problems. I've learned a lot as I've gotten into politics. There's a whole industry surrounding all of this. And
are you talking about those so-called safe or supervised injection sites when you say that?
I went through the downtown, I went down Hastings Street yesterday with Drew Coover, who's a really big online guy about what's going on down on the streets. And I went down and I saw and I looked myself and it's also become an industry. It's not about helping those people. It's not about helping the people. There's money being made. And so there's ways to help these people. And that's the next project. Okay,
Well,
so
fantastic. Well, Dallas, thank you so much for this, and stay in touch, and we'll have you on
Okay.
again. And once says Godspeed to all you're doing.
And Godspeed to you, David. Thank you for what you're doing. I really appreciate it. And to all your viewers, don't lose hope, guys. Keep fighting. Be that light.
Okay. See you again soon, Dallas.
Yeah,
Bye
see you
for
soon.
now. And that, of course, was Dallas Brodie, the leader of the OneBC Party. What a conversation. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed listening to it again. I really admire this woman. Can you imagine Dallas Brodie as the premier of BC? I think she'd be as good, if not better, than Danielle Smith. I think this is probably the most principled politician I've ever talked to. And no, I'm not working for her, but I'm telling it like it is. But I think she's really, really got a lot of great things to say. Before we leave, we talked about the land claims and the land acknowledgements. Here's U.S. journalist Megyn Kelly talking about that very thing, and this is fascinating.
Debbie Murphy's been with me forever, and she's up in Canada because she married a Canadian. And here's just an example of the land acknowledgement she has to listen to wherever she goes around Ontario. The town is called Burlington. Burlington, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nation and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe, okay, I don't know, Ashkenazi to the Haudenosaunee and the Métis, our lands spanning from Lake Ontario to the Niagara Escarpment are steeped in Indigenous history. The territory is mutually covered by the dish with one spoon, wampum belt covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy, the Ojibwe, and other allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. What the hell is
What the hell is that? Yeah, that's how people around the world are noticing how absurd Canada is, especially with these land acknowledgements. So want to encourage you to have a look at our merchandise. And, well, yeah, we got time to show it to you.
Who cares?
So this has been David Craydon for Stand on Guard. I hope you enjoyed this broadcast as much as I enjoyed hosting it for you. And that's what I plan to do every day. Thank you for those of you who subscribed, who resubscribed, if they took you off your subscription. And thank you for liking the station. Thank you so much for your support. We're going to go onwards and upwards from here. Back again tomorrow, 10 o'clock. We've got a lot of stuff on the go right now. We're doing a panel discussion probably on Thursday with Katie Pasitne, Jeff Wilson, the veterinarian, and my old friend, former agriculture minister, Jerry Ritz. I'm just waiting for Jerry to confirm. But that's coming up this week. Stay tuned. We've got a lot of exciting material. Thank you for watching. We'll be right back. Thank you for sharing this station with your friends and family. Thank you for hitting that like button, because I tell you, we are fighting back in a way I've never had to before, because I'm going to keep this station on the air. I am going to keep fighting for freedom. I'm going to keep fighting for justice and truth. And I am damn determined to resist this Carney government in any way possible as it encroaches upon our individual freedom. And it will continue to do that, mark my words. I'll be back again tomorrow. Same time, same place. 10 a.m. This has been David Crayden, broadcasting live from our nation's capital in Ottawa. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow.